Okay. And then I can, if you do request and need to, I can send the recording of this panel session to you. And then if you were if you were in the panel last week, I can send that to you as well.
Is there any kind of feedback that they gave that you got, like survey questions or feedback?
I did. We do have a survey that goes out. I have not checked it yet. What we're doing is compiling all their surveys. They take we try not to call it surveys so that they don't get overwhelmed, but they take about 5 surveys a week during each week. But what we've called them is like exhibitor questionnaire or submission 1 turn in, so when they switch it. But yeah, we did get a lot of positive feedback. They loved the advice that you all gave. So it was great. Yes, and then even from the teachers, they enjoyed it. It was great.
Good. It's kind of interesting to hear the dynamics and how the questions flowed. They got deep, and it's interesting because they got deeper. I felt like they got deeper.
Yes.
As it went along. They built nicely. You did a great job.
Thank you. Okay, so Dennis is now starting the webinar. And then I'll open that. All right, and they're joining.
Wow, they come on fast.
They are. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Student Leadership Series Week 2. We're just going to give everyone about 2 minutes to still log in as the attendee number is growing rapidly. That's cool. All right, they're still logging in. Okay. All right. So welcome to Student Leadership Series Week 2 panel. I'm Ari Lawson, one of the program coordinators of VitaLink OC. You all are doing an amazing job. You handled week 1 successfully with all of your submissions and attendance, and you're doing an amazing job this week. And thank you for joining us. We do have some amazing panelists here with us this week. We have Ms. Karen Rager from Rager Resources. We have Bill Cunningham from BERTS, Robert Page from Sandvik, and Bob Mosey from Mosey's. During this live panel, we do have closed captioning available, and the live panel will be recorded. If any of you have to log off early, that is fine. The recording will be available on the VitaLink app that you're using to complete the series. So let's get started. If we can, we'll start with the introduction from each of our panelists. Ms. Rager, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Karen Rager, and I am the president and founder of Rager Resources Group. We have been in operation for the past 13 years. We are a global executive recruitment firm, meaning that companies will call us to find their talent, and they pay us a fee to find that talent for them.
Mr. Mosey, would you like to go next?
Sure. So Bob Mosey, and I'm president and owner of Mosey's Production Machinist in Anaheim. We employ about 30 people, and we manufacture parts that go inside other people's equipment, like medical laboratory equipment or aircraft or hydraulic systems and that kind of stuff. If you got a chance to see the video that we did, you'll have some idea what we do. Been in business for 45 years.
Mr. Page.
Hello, Robert Page. I work for Sandvik Chloromont. My position is a global technical and development and technical training specialist. Responsible for global technical training distribution. Sandvik is a 150-year-old company. I've been there 20 years. We are an engineering solutions company selling cutting tools for the metal manufacturing.
And Mr. Cunningham.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Cunningham. My company name is BERT, which is Building Emergency Response Teams. We've been around for about 12 years now. We're in Old Town Orange and are thrilled to be in this area. Our company, basically, we train safety teams in how to make their OSHA compliance better, how to emergency action plans, how to respond to different issues that come before them, and try to reduce injuries and illnesses inside the workplace.
Very good. And then I also want to mention, before we start our questions, students, if you do have any additional questions, we do have the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen, or at the top, wherever it's located on your screen, where you can submit questions during the live panel. And so we'll go ahead and start with Ms. Roger with the first question. Did you take all advantages that your high school provided in terms of CTE programs or any internships available?
Yes, I did. When I was going to high school, there were a lot more programs offered, and accounting, and just a lot of how to budget your money, how to do a business plan. All of that was offered back then. So I did everything that was offered.
Very good. And Mr. Mosey, how about you? Any advantages that you may have taken that were provided from high school that you went to?
Probably a lot further back than Karen. I probably didn't. I may not have even known about them. I pretty much hid out in the industrial arts section of school, metal shop, wood shop, auto shop. That's where my interests were. I was already working jobs and stuff when I was a sophomore in high school all the way through because I wanted a car. So I probably didn't use the counselors and those kind of things as much as I could have. Hopefully today they have programs like this. You're getting exposed to a lot more careers that I didn't even know were available when I was in high school. So who knows, maybe I would have went a different direction in my career, but I certainly would encourage everyone to use all sources available to learn all the different careers so that you can make a good choice for yourself.
And Mr. Page, same question. Did you take all advantages that were available while you were in high school?
I'll have to say, I was a kid back then and had limited knowledge on how to take advantage of what high school had to offer. If I would have known back then, what I know today, it would have been a lot different. I would have taken advantage of a lot more. But I was lucky. I had parents that taught me a good work ethic, and I did have a great shop teacher that gave me a lot of guidance. And there was a co-op program that he got me involved with. So I turned into machinist pretty quickly right out of high school and started my career there. But if I'd have to go back in time, I would have taken a lot more advantage of the guidance counselors and the opportunities like this type of program and gotten a lot better off for it. So.
Very good. And Mr. Cunningham, did you take all advantages that were available in high school?
Well, the way my family situation was, for the first 3 years, I had to work full time in addition to high school. So obviously there wasn't, all I was able to do was basically keep up. But the last year, that family situation dramatically changed, and to where I couldn't work. And at that point, I was so starved for everything that I literally signed up for everything and went to, I was involved in I was involved in all the sports poorly, but I still got involved, to the chess team, to the choir, to everything else, and then literally went to every after-school program that there was because I was so thirsty for it. So yes and no, but I ended strong.
And so we did receive a question in the Q&A box, and I'll start with Ms. Roger. I don't want to ask age, but at what point, at what point did you figure out that this was the perfect career field for you?
It really wasn't until my 20s. I went to school to be a fashion designer. I went to FITM and thought I wanted to do that, and ended up, after I left retail, getting in a HR position with the Chicago Tribune, and worked with other recruitment firms to find staff for our company. And that's how I got into this. But I did the sales part of it. I didn't do recruiting. And I used to get really upset when people would call me a recruiter because I would look at them as if they were car salespeople. So I was moving clients to different companies and not getting a fee. And my clients finally said, you know, I think you're a recruiter. I think you should get paid for this. And that's how I ended up getting into this industry.
And same question for Mr. Mosey. At what point did you figure out that this was the perfect career for you?
Kind of grew into it. But even in high school, I knew I wanted to work with my hands. My dream was always to have my own garage. I loved working on cars, still do. And that's everything I did, was trying to get to that point. So my dad and I worked on cars at home, so I didn't really do much auto shop in high school, but I hung out in metal shop. So I learned a lot of the machining skills and stuff that I later used by hanging out in metal shop in high school. Went out, got in the Air Force, got out of the Air Force, was going to start my own garage, and my dad started a machine shop and asked me to come help on a certain project. And I kind of never left. Just kind of come in, started at the bottom, and continued my education in machining. It paid better than the auto mechanics at the time. And I just hung out, and eventually things progressed, and I learned some leadership skills and started taking over, and now I'm the president of the company.
Very good. And then same question for Mr. Page. At what point did you know that your current field is the perfect field?
Yeah, for me, I really like my job, and yes, I think currently in my life, you know, I'm in the perfect job, but that's not to say I wasn't in my perfect job before this one. You know, for me, a perfect job is something that moves me forward in life, not only in my career, but in my life as well. So I think I still look for perfect jobs, but I really like my job. I think it's a perfect job in my life for right now. I'm growing, I'm moving forward, but I think there's still more perfect jobs for me. So I never thought of my job as a perfect job, but I think I've had a lot of perfect jobs, you know. So I would always suggest to somebody, you know, keep looking for your perfect job. You may be in a perfect job, but look at other opportunities as well.
And then Mr. Cunningham, when did you know that this was the perfect career for you?
Well, very similar to what Mr. Page was saying, that you know, I've had several jobs. About 14 years ago, I had the opportunity, because I'm actually coming into this career it's a total career shift about 14 years ago, and you look at the vintage, that's rather late, you know, on the scale. But I had a perfect job then because it was financially very rewarding, and it was able to take care of the family, take care of everything it needed to. But it didn't give me the personal reward, but it certainly accomplished what it needed to do, and I made the best of it. But then, you know, I had an opportunity to go to a volunteer event, and I just connected with the FEMA, the ICS, the whole incident command system. I just fell in love with it, and so was able to very quickly turn it into a full job from that point. So as was saying before, it's one of those things where you are now is it perfectly built to where I can be now. So it's a continuum.
Very good. And then so I'll stick with you, Mr. Cunningham, if that's okay. With your current industry field, if you can mention your industry field you're working in, what jobs would be best for students to look into applying for right out of high school?
Well, the interesting thing is, if you're not familiar with OSHA, OSHA is a governing agency that makes sure that all companies and corporations, facilities, operations operate very safely. And there's regulations that work to that. Every single employer that has 10 or more employees has to have a written safety plan in place, and it has to be reviewed every year. If you're an office, it can be a very simple one, but it still has to be done. So literally every single organization you look at has to have a safety aspect to it. And that's our entire world. So you can literally marry something that, Mr. Mosey or Mr. Page or even Ms. Rager's businesses have to have a safety program, and you can marry something that you're interested in, but then have a safety aspect to it and move in. So it literally would work anywhere you want it to work. Is if you have you want to make a difference. Our whole the company byline is alleviating fear, because that's what safety programs do. Is they get rid of fear. If you have an emergency action plan, it gets rid of fear if an emergency comes up. And so if you have that mindset, you can apply it to any industry whatsoever you want to go into, or if you want to focus on it, there are safety organizations that we need trainers all the time. We need people to help write and develop. They work forward.
Perfect. So any students looking to go into health and safety, that's your notes to take.
There you go.
And so directing the same question to Ms. Roger, what type of jobs can students look for right out of high school that are in your career industry?
They can look at, we call them sourcers, and there's someone that is a person that goes on the different job boards and goes to look for the candidates that company's looking for. So I may have a sourcer, and all that person does all day is, if I'm working on an engineering manager position, they would be going on Monster and LinkedIn and looking for all the requirements that I requested, and then send me over those resumes. And that's a good introductory, because it gives them an opportunity to learn about different companies, different types of positions, different titles. And, recruiters are more than willing to be that mentor to help that person. So there's a lot of opportunity they can do, especially in COVID, remote, doing all that. And it does pay well.
Very good. And so same question for Mr. Mosey. With what type of jobs would students right out of high school look for in your career industry?
I like to talk about our industry bigger than just machining. For us, we're mostly a machine shop, but I like to focus on manufacturing in general, because there are just so many different careers in manufacturing, and trying to find that right one that really fits what you enjoy doing. And I think you have to enjoy your job, or then it really is a work. So for us, for our shop, if you're looking as a young student, I would probably apply for a shop helper. And you might be doing anything from sweeping the floor to emptying chips out of the machines, helping deburr parts, just anything that our guys need help with. And it kind of gives you an opportunity to learn all the different jobs within the company, and maybe focus on one or the other. And you can do all this while you're going to school. So, if you decide on a career and you want to go down that path, and this fits into that, you can work here and experiment around. Some of the best engineers I know have worked in machine shops while they were going to college to learn how to be an engineer, because when they finished schooling, they knew how to design parts that you could actually make, because they knew what it took to make a part. So just a little hint there. Those are some of the best engineers I've known, are ones that worked in a machine shop while they were going to school.
Very nice. And then same question for you, Mr. Page, with what type of jobs are involved for students right out of high school in your career industry?
Well, like Mr. Mosey, I'm in the same industry, and I was a machinist when I got out of school. Well, I wasn't a machinist. I'll say I was a machine operator.
Right.
In the same regards, I like to take a little bigger picture of it too in manufacturing. Manufacturing can connect to so many different types of jobs, but when you start off, just like Mr. Mosley said, getting into at least a manufacturing facility where you're starting to sweep floors, deburring parts, and smaller jobs to get familiar with it while you're maybe taking classes or higher education is really a good thing. If you're taking shop classes within your high school, it even affords you to jump into the machine operator much faster right out of high school. So a lot of times it comes down to soft skills as well, where you're communicating, able to communicate, and do all of those different soft skills. You can build a resume in high school and come out of high school with a decent job, starting job in manufacturing and work your way up very quickly. Like Mr. Mosley said, I know some of the best engineers that started off on the ground floor. Absolutely.
Very good. And so we did receive another question in the Q&A. And if I can stick with you, Mr. Page, a student asked, how does it affect you working with, or is it possible, I guess, to work with a small team, I guess varying from like 5 to 12 employees? Does that affect you and completing your goals on your projects?
I would say not at all. Not at all. I mean, as you grow in your career, that's one of the staples as a good leader is to be able to work with others, right? And coordinate with other people. And as a project manager, you're doing the same thing. Diversity and inclusion are two really great things. People have good ideas from different backgrounds. And as a project manager or a leader, you need to work with those diversities and those inclusions and get people working together and get their ideas. So no, not at all.
Very good. And so I'll direct the same question to Mr. Cunningham. Would you say having a small team affects completing any of your projects if you have a small team?
Well, what's interesting is I would suggest that almost every organization whatsoever is built on small teams. Very seldom do you have a group of more than 10 or 12 people that don't work together and then are part of another team, as it builds up. So whether you're, Google or BERT, you have groups of small teams that build together and build an organization up. So I think understanding small teams is the critical part in how do you coordinate, work together, develop relationships, see past, the work in front of you to the project, and just kind of, in my thought, small teams are about what we all live in.
And then directing the same question to Ms. Roger, would you say working with a small team may affect meeting any of your work goals?
It's not going to be a negative at all in what I do. So working with small teams or large teams, the more smaller the group, the more intimate you can be, the more brainstorming you can do, the more you can come to a group decision faster.
Very good. And same question for Mr. Mosey. Would working in small groups affect completing any of your major projects?
I'm going to kind of combine this with, because I got the Q&A box up and there was a question specifically to me.
Yes.
Because I said we had such a small crew. How does that affect the atmosphere in our shop? So I think it's like everyone else, a small team does get things done. But we're 30 people. That's everything. It's probably 20 out in the shop, 10 in the office. But we work together collaboratively, and we consider ourselves to be family. So all of our values for our business and everything are all based around family values. And if you were to ask any of the folks that work here why they like to work here, and we have asked them that, they almost always say because it feels like family. So I like the idea of a small company. I've worked in larger organizations, and I never felt part of it the way I do in smaller company like ours.
Awesome advice. So my next question I will direct to Mr. Cunningham is, what is your day-to-day like in managing your business?
Well, it's a very similar question than was given last week. So those that were here are probably going to hear something similar. I have a very, very defined day that obviously weaves throughout, but I have, because there's so many things going and I have so many operations, we have four departments that are actually working pretty substantially out in the field that I have to deal with. I literally break my day into pieces. I have a time for some early morning, some reflection, a time for some physical activity every morning, but then I break nonprofit work and I get that done by 10 o'clock and I don't do any more. If there's more that's needed, then I put it off to another day. I do business development work before lunch. I do business operations work after lunch, and then I do wrap up. And so the day is for me very defined, which allows me, there's all the time there's things that come in and weave on it, but it gives me some definite things that I have to get done on certain times and periods. And it works well for me. I've got a military background. And so, Mr. Mosey was saying that, with the Air Force, I was Coast Guard. And so you have to get certain jobs done. And when you're in the military, you're not flexible. You just have to get it done. If somebody gives you a job to do, it's going to be done. It's going to be done right now. And then you're constantly reprioritizing, but it's going to be done right now. And so that focus, it's a very kind of focused day is the way mine is.
And so directing the same question to Ms. Roger, what is your day-to-day like in managing your business?
Everything is on a schedule. So for anybody to be successful as a recruiter, you really need to be focused and you really need to manage your time well. And if you stick to your schedule and not go off on tangents, you're going to do really well. So I have from 8 to 12 o'clock, I'm interviewing candidates. From 12 to 2, I'm following up with candidates and clients. I do a lot of entertaining pre-COVID with clients in the evening to meet with them and to really get a better understanding of their company. So I stick pretty much to that schedule. And that way, you're consistent and your clients know you're consistent.
And same question for Mr. Mosey is, what is your day-to-day like in managing your business?
It's crazy. So we've tried to organize the company. I have a very good leadership team. So I basically have 4 people that report to me. I have finance, which happens to be our oldest son. I have operations, which he's been here 20 years. I have HR, who's been here 20 years. And up until recently, I've been doing sales. We hired a salesperson in April, and he now does business development for us. So my job today really is to be here for them and check in with them, make sure that they have all the tools that they need to be able to do their jobs. A lot of people will say holding them accountable, kind of, but in a family sort of way, I guess. I'm probably a little too soft, but I like to just make sure that they have everything they need to work with. So that's kind of my job on a day-to-day basis. I get up, I walk around, I see everybody in the company every day. I manage by walking around.
Very good. And so same question for Mr. Page. What is your day-to-day like in managing your business?
Well, I don't manage per se a business. I have managed departments within our corporation. And it's really a challenge when you talk about managers and their roles, because the roles vary so much. I would say the biggest thing when I was managing departments is problem solving. You know, this happens every day. You're problem solving, answering questions from your team members, from stakeholders that want stuff from you, from other departments, and you're trying to remove obstacles for your reports, for them to get their work done. You're dealing with escalations, putting fires out. You're attending a lot of meetings, you know, some as an attendee, some as you're trying to influence others to move in a direction. And at the same time, you know, you're trying to keep these wheels, the clogs turning and everybody working at the same time. You know, the stress, the stress is high. So you try to keep the stress down in the environment. You know, all the while you're thinking about your own career as well, and you're trying to move forward on that. The manager role varies from company to company, from person to person, from role to role. Everybody manages a bit differently, but those are some of the things I see in management and leadership.
Very good. And so we received another question in the Q&A, and I'll start with Mr. Mosey. For students that are going into college, is it better to build skills in multiple fields or focus directly on one skill?
Well, to be honest, I can't speak from experience because I did not go to college. I went right from high school to the Air Force to working. But from what I've seen others do, a lot of times what we go to college for isn't necessarily what we end up doing ultimately. I think the process of going to college is important. I think the process of learning is important. And I think those are things, the really good skills you learn by going to college. So whether you actually end up working in a career that, you know, your education supported, you know, either way is okay. But whatever you do, I'd say be open to all the possibilities. And once you get in a career, don't be afraid to maybe veer from that a little bit and because you'll find things that you didn't know about that you'll like better. And don't be afraid to learn about those and move in those directions. You gotta be happy in what you're doing if you want to be happy in life. So that's my advice.
Looking for that perfect job.
Well, yeah.
And so I'll direct the same question to Mr. Page. While students are in college, is it better to build skills in multiple fields or one direct field?
I'm like Mr. Mosley. I did not really attend college. I've taken college courses, but I would have to say, you know, you need some foundation, and that foundation should be something that you like to do. Once you get into your career, you will find opportunities that you've never dreamed of and opportunities to go different directions. There is where you will be able to find maybe your perfect job. But my advice always is to follow the path, look at the opportunities, and always self-develop. Even though you go to college, you're not done learning. You should be self-developing your whole life. That's what moves you forward and allows you to grab opportunities and move in different directions.
And so I'll direct the question to Mr. Cunningham as well. For students in college, is it better to build multiple skills in multiple fields or one specific field?
Well, so far we're in a trifecta because I didn't go to college either. I went directly from high school to the Coast Guard and then into a full career and then into the one I'm in now. But I will say that, and I said this last time, it would have been a whole lot easier if I'd had the opportunity for college. I mean, literally, I would have had a nice springboard to build on. I think the question goes in a couple directions. If you're driven, and I can use my kids as a point. My last daughter, my youngest daughter is, yeah, and my last daughter is just about graduating college. And the older ones, one of them was going to be a teacher, and she was literally from setting up dolls. My wife's a teacher. She was set up dolls. She was going to be a teacher. So if that's the direction you're going, go all in. She now has 2 master's degrees in administration and the whole bit. And so if you're driven in that, and you're early on and you're driven, you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a CPA, you're going to be, and that is so passionate for you, then I would say by all means, really focus everything there. But what I've also told my kids, they've grown up is their father being an entrepreneur, which means that every one of them has done inordinate amount of filing. I'm sure that Mr. Mosey, Mr. Page, your kids have spent time in the machine shop, even though they weren't machine shop kids. And Ms. Rigger, I can't, speak to you, but I'm just saying that they've seen what it's like in the consuming part of it. And I've always said, have something else, because you never know when something is going to happen. And what I always encourage is have something that can be your own business. Have some business idea in the background that's always percolating. That if something takes your career away, you've got something you can kind of move in that nobody can take away from you. And that's when the beauty of owning your own business is for.
And same question to Ms. Roger. For students that are going into college after high school, is it better to build multiple skills in multiple fields or one specific field?
I would strongly suggest that every student take a Myers-Briggs assessment, because I know when I graduated high school, I thought I wanted to go into fashion design. I read up on it and all of that. And once I did the Myers-Briggs, it really helped me to see other areas that I would be great at. So I was open to exploring more when I went to school. I think that would be the best start, because it kind of gives you a path on some options that you can do. And if it shows you more of an engineering type person, then, stay focused in that area. But college is a time to explore who you are and what's important to you, because the world, there's so many things out there. So take advantage of all the opportunities that you can have while going to college, and explore different, all kinds of industries.
Ms. Roger, if I can stay with you for the next question, what would you say is the most difficult part about being a leader?
We all want to be liked, and the hardest part about being a leader, I feel, is not everyone's going to like you and like your leadership skills, and you just have got to believe in yourself and know that you're doing the best job you can with the information that you have. And just know it's not a popularity contest, but you got to treat everybody with respect. And you never know who you may be reporting to in the future.
And I'll direct the same question to Mr. Mosey. With what would you say is the most difficult part about being a leader?
You never know who you're going to be answering to someday. So they may end up being your customers. And I've ran into that, where kids that we've had work here in the summer have gone on through engineering schools and then went to work at a company, ended up getting a phone call from them because they were an engineer and they're designing a part and they need some help making it. So it can be full circle, so you never want to upset anybody. As far as being a leader goes, it wasn't something I set out to do necessarily. Kind of, as I said earlier, I kind of grew into this job, but I've really enjoyed working with people, and what I get my most joy from is when I see them excited about their jobs and wanting to show me what they've done. That's when I feel like I've been a good leader, because I allowed them to experiment and figure things out for themselves and come up with solutions for problems. And I think leading is just that. It's not pushing people or forcing people. It's leading them. It's, hey, come on, let's go this way. And that's kind of a cheerleader kind of thing, but that's the way I like to lead. So, as far as the difficult part goes, is when it comes down to the hard, cold business, and sometimes you have to hold people accountable for doing a job. That's the hard part for me, being that firm guy.
Yeah. And so same question directed to Mr. Page is, what would you say the most difficult part is about being a leader?
Yeah, for me, everyone's different, and some skills, may come more natural to some than others. For me, I had to work on a lot of different skills, but the biggest one for me that was difficult was the empathy and understanding of others. Why can't you get it done? And there's lots of reasons behind that. You don't know what's going on in people's lives outside of work, and it can become difficult to understand that and have some empathy for it. But for me, a good leader has patience and understanding and that empathy, and at the same time they can motivate people and communicate well with them. And one of the biggest things is to stay humble. If you stay humble, it's a good key to being a good leader.
Good. And same question for Mr. Cunningham is, what would you say is the most difficult part about being a leader?
I think some of what's been said is sometimes being too nice of a guy and kind of going a little too far in forgiving, is that you can keep moving people, but if they're consistently not moving up and developing, at some point you kind of have to shift gears and be a little bit more firm. And it's tough when you've been kind of a kind, gentle, bring someone along, and then all of a sudden they feel it starting to shift, and then they step back. Wait a minute, who is this? It's like, no. We've now moved this several times. We now have to have it done this week. And if not, we're going to need to start talking about consequences. And I think that's been the toughest part, because our people are all good, but we also bring in interns, we bring in young people, and they kind of, perhaps don't quite step up as much as you expect that they could, and finding where that balance, that shift is from the easygoing, friendly guiding to, all right, now it's time to get serious. I would say that's probably my personal toughest part.
And so, Mr. Cunningham, I'm going to stick with you actually for another question that we received in the Q&A board. What would you recommend students put on their resumes that would help them stand out?
Well, one of the things, this is very very unusual, and it's something that I've used over the years. I've hired a lot of high school students. I've hired a lot of college students. And one of the things that I've asked for, especially high school students, because it's not, you really can't see, it's like, how did I get a job if I can't ever, how did I get experience if I haven't had a job? I've asked for a copy of the report card. And the interesting thing is, I'm not as interested in the grades on the report card. What I'm interested in is the attendance. Have they been there? Are there lots of absences? Are there lots of things? And if somebody has straight A's, but there's lots of absences, I'm afraid I'm just not gonna, it's just, I can't count on them, because there's not some magic switch that when you start working that's gonna change. And the same kind of thing is even with college, as I've asked for transcripts to see what teachers have said about them, et cetera, especially for the first job, because those are the people that have spent the most time with you. I get pushback from it, but it's like, okay, I'll get it, and Ms. Rager can say, I'll get 50 or 60 resumes. I have to filter them some way. and if I could use her organization, which would be a great one in the future, but I have to sift them some way. So I'll just look and say, okay, where's, what's here and what's strong. And so my suggestion would be volunteer it if you're passionate about it.
And so I'll direct the same question to Ms. Roger with what should students put on their resumes to stand out?
That's a difficult question because it really depends on what they're applying for, what type of position. But people are creatures of habit as far as hiring managers. So no fancy font, no picture of yourself on there. It needs to be easy to read. So it just follow the format, and you can Google what a resume looks like, but just follow the format: white paper, black, font, Times Roman. Your resume, as far as how it's going to stand out, you have very little experience in high school, so there's really nothing that's going to stand out unless you had a great opportunity. You worked for one of your friends' family and had a great experience working for them, doing something specifically on what you're applying for.
And also for Mr. Mosey, what would you recommend students put on their resume to stand out?
Going along with Karen, it depends on what job you're applying for, but we'll just say, speaking to high school students, you don't have a lot of work experience, so we don't expect to see a lot of work experience. However, I would like to see work experience, whatever it is. So if you worked at the grocery store, if you worked at McDonald's, have that on there so we can see what you did. And possibly within theirs, if you started out flipping burgers, you ended up getting upgraded to a manager or something. Those are good things to have on there. That to me means you're working the job you're working. It may not be your career job, your lifetime job, but whatever job you're doing, you're working it to the most of your ability and trying to grow within that job. Because you'll take those skills of learning how to work the system and learning how to be a manager to the next job, whatever that is. So don't be afraid to expound on what you achieved at those jobs. And then if you can somehow express how you like to learn, I like to read, I like to watch podcasts, whatever it is, I like learning. It means a lot to me. And if you were involved in sports or extracurricular activity at school, did you hold a leadership position? Were you, the team leader in whatever sports you were in? Those kind of things matter because that means you rise to the top and people look up to you. And those are good things to look for when you're looking for a quality of a person.
And same question for Mr. Page would be, what should students put on their resume?
Yes, and there was a lot said already that I would agree with. Some of the other things, and I just went through this with my high schooler that didn't have a job and was complaining that what do I put on my resume if I never had any work? And I said, well, there's lots of things. We did a project with Nextdoor, and we helped out people from our neighborhood in small chores, volunteer work. We had a hurricane in our area, and we volunteered at a church. Co-captain of a sports team, or you're heading up the chess club team, or you're part of VitaLink Association. Those are all good things to put on your resume. To me, it's showing your work ethic, showing your dedication to work. Those are kind of the two main areas to get across in a resume. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It just has to be some things that show that you have a work ethic, you're willing to work, and that you're going to be there. So, and everything else that everybody else said.
And so sticking with Mr. Page, we're going to go through our brief advice of Mr. Page. What advice would you give to students who are working on building their leadership skill for their future career?
I would say start with the basic skills. Be a communicator. Not only speaking, but listening and writing emails. have some etiquette and some dedication to those things. Problem solve, you know, work with challenges that arise and try to figure out what would you do in that situation, and work with teams, with other people, making sure that you have that ability to work with others, because that's really important in building leadership skills. And have initiative. The initiative is not waiting to be asked, but willing to ask. So, of course, you know, professionalism, a good work ethic, you know, being detailed orientated, those will all help you and allow you to succeed in leadership as well. You know, it's all a good thing.
Very good. And then same question for Mr. Cunningham with what advice do you have for students who are building their leadership skill for their career?
I used this this comment a little earlier. There's not going to be a switch that flips when you leave high school. You know, it's easy to fall into, well, I'm going to do that just because I'm, you know, here. But once I become an adult, you know, I'm going to flip the switch and it works. I would say, you know, you work on your grammar. You know, if you're used to communicating via text and, you know, using icons and small eyes and everything else, that's going to become a habit. It'll be very easy to do. I've seen it. I've seen letters. I've seen things on resumes. You know, I've seen things of people who just kind of accidentally flip into that. I would say start owning yourself now as a professional. I would go further is get involved in organizations. We talk about Toastmasters. Get involved in organizations that are going to make you grow as a person. And further that, as you're going through classes, even in high school or whatever, don't just show up and get a grade and figure out how to do it. Really learn what the skill is that is in front of you. And so if you wind up, you know, as a volunteer for a hurricane at a church, push yourself to understand what's going on in the bigger picture. Understand, you know, yes, I'm just handing out cabbages to family members, but then just start looking around and saying, wait a minute, this is this, but then these people over here are coordinating food going to different areas, and then these people are doing this, and you start to see a much bigger picture and find yourself looking at that much bigger picture with every organization and every interaction. You'll start to, if you open your eyes, you'll start to see that there's so much more before you.
Thank you. And so same question for Ms. Roger with the brief answer of what advice would you give for students who are building their leadership skill for their careers?
I would say something that would be really great that I've not seen high school students do is to get some business cards. You can get them on Vistaprint. I think it's $9.99 with your name, your phone number, your email address, and maybe on the back of the card, it might be some of the industries that might be fascinating to you. If it's in entertainment or marketing, that you have that. So when everywhere you go, you want to tell people you're looking for work, you're looking for a job, and they'll say, well, what type of work are you looking for? You know, I'm looking to get an entry-level position with a marketing company. Here's my card. You're just much more professional, and you'll get a lot more respect instead of you writing your name on a piece of paper and giving it to them. They have your business card. It shows that you are showing that leadership skill, that you are a professional.
Very good. And then finally from Mr. Mosey, what advice would you give to students who are building their leadership skill?
All of the above, and I'll throw in a little bit about what I did. When I understood I was going to have to be a leader, I looked at what my weaknesses were and tried to find areas where I could help with those weaknesses. So I was, you know, terribly frightened of speaking to anybody. I didn't understand financial stuff very well because I'm a shop guy. So there was a lot of areas of business that I wasn't familiar with, and I tried to put myself in those uncomfortable positions to force myself to learn those skills. So we joined a trade association, as Mr. Cunningham suggested, for our industry. I hung out with them, and I found out that all the other business owners were all very willing to share their trials and tribulations, and I've learned so much from all of them. I took that to the national level and got involved there, volunteer for a lot of stuff there, did it same thing at church. I was just go to church kind of guy until our kids went to school and I had to do volunteer hours, and next thing you know, I'm running the festival. And so you just kind of put yourself in those positions and you will learn those leadership skills. And through all of that, taking recommendations on certain books to read. Never been a big reader, but if you can find a good business book like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or the 4 Disciplines of Execution, those are really good Stephen Covey books that I would certainly recommend to anybody to start on what it means to be a leader.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the panelists that joined us. I know that we're going to end here in a second. And so I will share my screen for the students that did join us for you to take down the code that you can use to log into the community game that is in the VitaLink app. And thank you to the panelists for joining us from your busy schedule. I know the students and VitaLink does greatly appreciate it as students are building their leadership skills. And the call will be ending here in about 2 minutes. So make sure, students, that you are writing down your code. And if you do have any questions for these panelists, look for their business in the exhibitor section and you can contact them directly.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
It was a
Thank you.
pleasure. It was a
Absolutely.
pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.